Welcome to the Wonder of WOOO podcast, where we highlight how businesses can scale profitably by serving others well. I'm Darryl Zavadny.
And I'm Ed Howie.
And this is
the Wonder of WOOO. If you're a business owner investing time, money, and marketing only to be frustrated by losing customers, then this podcast is for you.
The Wonder of WOOO podcast is really about celebrating the rewards of serving others well in business and in life. And we talk about this all the time. It's not just good for business. It doesn't just feel good. Rather, it's good for business as well.
It is. It's good for business. It's good for life. And it takes effort. And that's what is so great about these conversations we've been having over the weeks and months is that as the more we talk about it, the more compelled I am to want to do even more of it.
Right. Absolutely. Ed, as we get started, we always do this every episode. Let's just define for the sake of our community. If you're new to our community, what on earth is WOOO? What's the wonder of WOOO? What are we even talking about? And then we can dive into our time together today.
So WOOO is winning others over and over. Now, you may be familiar with the 2-0 WOOO. We're the 3-0 WOOO, and that is winning others over and over. The logic is that you must be intentional to win others over, that first impression, that thing you do on the first date. But it takes a lot of intention. It takes processes. It takes like skills, abilities to do it over and over again.
Right.
Not only in our personal life, in our business life, with our team members, with our customers, just all over. And so the wonder of WOOO is celebrating all the incredible examples of people and organizations and individuals that do it well and trying to dissect how they do it. And it's also recognizing some of the things that we just recklessly or kind of ignorantly, meaning unawaredly do, that if we could just do a little less of those, a little more of the WOOO, life is better for everybody.
Right. Yeah. And we are, of course, co-journeyers on it. We are far from the sage
We
expert.
are practicing progress, not perfection, because, frankly, I don't think anyone can empirically only woo, and hopefully no one can empirically poo only. It is really a scale, it's a continuum, but we can't lose sight of that. And I think sometimes for me in the business of life, it can be a lot easier just to be functional versus intentional.
Sure. Well, and obviously you and I have deep conviction that businesses can scale profitably by doing this. And personally, relationships can be enriched when this happens, right? This isn't just a business thing. Of course, that's the primary, impetus of this, but there's magnificent and real personal application
For sure.
in terms of how one can win.
And what's great about it is almost like an endless topic. I mean, we have so many different ideas for show episodes, and this is one that really, really caught my eye when we started talking about it. I mean, basically, would you say the title again? Because this was your title, buddy.
Yeah, so the title that we have on this episode is "Do Funeral Homes Need WOOO?"
Let's make sure we capture this right. The question of the day is, do funeral homes need WOOO? That is the question. The clock starts now. Tell me why you came up with that title for this episode.
Yeah, well,
I know you have, and joking aside, I know you have a very personal experience around that, but I think it is a very human experience as well, and it's very universal.
Yeah, so I would answer the question first by saying, yes, I do believe that funeral homes need WOOO, and my conviction stems from personal experience, from my father passing away suddenly, Halloween Eve in 2019. I got a phone call that he had a heart attack and, tragic events. And the aftermath of that is really what got me into thinking about this, namely, and this isn't to demonize anybody in any industry, but it is to say, man, it was a bad experience. It just, and there were challenges in various stages of it. And
so it was basically a bad experience with a bad experience.
It was a terrible life experience with a bad experience on the other side of it. And Ed, honestly, I pulled back from it and thought, what do I think about this? And obviously there's grief and there's, sorting through the loss of my father. And then there's also just me objectively looking at it as a business
owner going,
thinking, what business does this? And so I really, kind of walked away thinking, well, okay, so everybody dies. So the TAM, the total available market, is monstrous.
Right.
Everybody dies once. I mean, on the one hand, I get it, but it feels like there's something missing there. That there's money made in all these silos of the grief services world, right? So there's everything from flowers to catering to blah 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 blah, to funeral services and caskets and all of that. And I just felt like it sure feels like there's something missing here. That this could have been done way, way, way better. And so there's a practical side for me, and then there's almost the lost emotional side of the grief could have been handled so much better if this thing had been coordinated better.
Well, what is one? I'm right here with you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and as we look at what we've distilled around WOOO, we have defined that the ultimate brand experience for any brand is a combination of the actual transactional product functional experience of the enterprise, but then the exponential factor is the impact it has on the lives of the customer. And I mean, that is exactly what you just said.
Right.
That you have struggling with, we're exploring it today. We're the intersection of what was needed for how they needed to show up for you and what was needed as far as what you needed from them functionally, the conflict and basically the lack of positive energy, if nothing else, around that. Right?
Yeah. So can I hop in real fast on that? And I agree completely. And so we say all the time, as we wrap up our episodes, that everyone wants WOOO.
Right.
And so the thing that this experience kind of got me sort of thinking about is, well, does everybody need to give it, or should they?
Right.
And so I actually thought I'm just going to start a business. I'm going to do this thing differently. And how would I do this thing differently? And so
you're going to start a funeral home.
So no, I actually thought, I want to change the way this industry thinks.
Okay.
And I want to change how the industry operates. And so I journeyed with friends and thought, so are you familiar with the not.com? It's a
yes.
wedding stuff,
Yes.
So weddings existed before the not.com. People got married, they said I do and all of that. But the not.com came along and said we could help bundle all of these services together to make it a whole lot better for the bride and groom to be.
And they incredibly disrupted the entire wedding industry.
They did. And they came in and said, we want to think about you. We want to think about your experience. And so instead of it being a number of disparate, disconnected, or quasi-connected ventures, they said, we're going to bundle it because we're concerned about your experience. And so we want to help make that a seamless experience. And so what I wanted to do was build the not.com for the grief services industry, was to say, how could we create a similar experience? Marriages happened prior to the not.com and it disrupted. Deaths happened prior to, we were calling it better grief, better grief. And the whole idea was, how do you make grief better? Like, grief is hard, but how do you make it better? And at its core, Ed, was about saying, we want to build a brand. We want to build something that is an experience, even though there's grief baked into it. How do we do that? And you can think about this in industries where you've got insurance folks or whoever, a car insurance or life insurance or whatever, where there's inherent emotion baked into something that you can still handle it in a way that is a wow from a brand experience.
For sure.
So that's what we're trying to do. And I've hit pause on that.
Did you?
Yeah.
Okay, but let's go back to the question.
Mm-hmm.
And it was, do funeral homes need WOOO, correct?
Mm-hmm.
The question there to you is, do funeral home customers need WOOO?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
All right. And if what you just described was based on the combination of the transaction, the functional relationship, and the overall impact, that there was a gap.
Mm-hmm.
And that you, using your business mind and identifying, as we as business owners and leaders do, if you're an expert in insurance and you've got a friend who's buying insurance, you know exactly how that transaction should have gone or not. We go into a restaurant, we know exactly what we wish the server was going to do. But beyond that, you took it beyond that and said, okay, here's some universalities. Okay, and what you just said earlier was that you saw there was an opportunity to disrupt. Well, this is the business truth of this conversation. And I want to dig into more of the color commentary. The business truth is if you don't woo your customers, someone else will.
Right.
Unless you have truly a exclusive, impenetrable product that truly you are the only 100% source for. I don't believe I could say it any more clearly that if you don't woo your customers, someone else will. Now, people change for fear, vision, and pain, right? I don't like operating out of fear. I would rather proactively woo than reactively woo.
Right.
But we have had times in all our businesses when customers have given us clear counsel on an opportunity that was poo that we better fix and woo, not just probably for that customer, but for other customers, right?
Right.
So let's use the funeral home. Like the theory is that, oh, well, the customer's actually already dead. Well, that's not the case.
Right.
The economic buyer, more times than not, is the family member. And what were you going through as a family member?
Yeah, I mean, grief, but we're also processing through all the mechanics. And of course, there's, you've got siblings and spouses and, the widow or the widower. And you've got the next generation that from a practical standpoint, you think, well, again, the TAM, the total available market is everybody's going to die.
And you were in shock.
Yeah.
It was unexpected. You're having to make functional decisions, like literally, how do I honor my father?
Right.
And was he cremated or buried?
He's cremated.
Okay. So how do I get all that right and everything and do it right, let alone the services and everything? And you're either having to spend your own money or your mother's money or the estate money, and you have no idea what is what at that point, because this is within 24 to 48 hours. Who better to woo than the funeral home industry? I mean, I would assume that's what they're calling. Now, let me share with you a little bit about our experience. Again, we're not trying to disparage anyone.
Yeah, right.
But my wife and I lost both of her parents. Both died unexpectedly. We used the same funeral home for the first time. The first time was being there with Catherine's mom, who was beyond crushed that her husband of nearly 60 years had passed away unexpectedly. And so within 36 hours, it's like dark walnut versus light walnut because he was buried and that kind of stuff. And so we were there as family members trying to help protect her, help guide her, but also serve her. Right. And I would tell you, going through that process as an adult was shocking. And part of it was honestly a little disgusting. You know what I mean? I believe businesses are in business to make money.
Sure. As they should.
As it should be. Yeah. But I also believe you run a risk charging $12 for a $1 soda, right? Not that they were selling sodas, but you know what I'm talking about.
The equivalent.
So, exactly. Catherine's mom, 3 years later, died unexpectedly. And as well. And we were out of town when it happened. And knowing that the funeral home that we had a relationship with was going to take care of us and be able to navigate things as we're rushing back to the hill country of Texas, it changed the perspective because we now had a relationship established. And while the writing the contract was really not woeful, the way they took care of us got better, but then the trust we had in them and the second time around made it different.
Right.
In your experience, did it ever get better with once you got past the disgusting part of the buying, right? The purchase order?
Right. Yeah.
Did it get better, or what did you feel like it was totally lacking the service you needed?
Well, I think you said this not to denigrate anybody.
No, but this was your experience as a customer.
Right. Yeah. Ours was complicated because they were in different cities, and, my parents live in, South Carolina.
Yeah.
And we were in Texas and, navigating remotely, and he passed in the Caribbean. So there were, multiple, point is there are, there are learning curves in service industries. And certainly I think the next time around I'd be wiser and smarter and all of that. I think from the standpoint, though, of the industry, there's such incredible opportunity to say, how could I honor Mr. and Mrs. Howie in an incredible way? In what ways could I anticipate needs with great empathy? In what ways could I make the decision-making simpler? In what ways could I think through, you talked about servers, walk into a restaurant. The best server you and I have had is the one who anticipates needs. It's the one who says, who tops off the drink before your water glass or your tea glass before it's empty, who, makes a recommendation that they think will meet your needs most optimally. And so to me, the industry didn't do that for me. I think I'd be wiser the next time around if I were the owner of a funeral home, or if I were involved in the grief services industry. I would view it as an opportunity to honor people and to build a business. And we talk about winning others over and over. We say you can scale business profitably. Right. You can do that by serving others well. And so this is the prime example of how to do that. It just so happens you lose a customer, but in doing so, you actually might gain a whole bunch more customers.
Oh yeah. I mean, the funeral home that we used with my parents is the funeral home we used with my grandmother. The funeral home, it is a business, and let's think about the funeral home operator for a second. I don't think my sweetheart believes that no one gets in business to not do well.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I don't think anyone goes, let's start a business. Let's take out a loan. Let's mortgage the house, and let's see just how uncaring we can be for our customers.
Right.
However, as we know in our businesses, you probably know in your business, is that the repetition of doing the same thing over and over again can become weary. Mm-hmm. It can become tiring. It can be hard to motivate that team to get ready for another Christmas season in the floral business or the Christmas tree business or whatever it may be, right?
Yeah.
And so thinking about the funeral home business, they're dealing with death constantly.
Mm-hmm.
I would imagine it could be very difficult to keep your A game up with all those emotions.
Sure.
Again, not excuse, not in any way, limiting what you said, but the reality, the universal application of this.
Right.
That reality doesn't replace the requirement that in your case, in my case, and any customer at a funeral home case, even more important to woo your customers then, because they're in the most vulnerable situation. Here's what came through my mind as we were talking is you as a customer at the funeral home dealing with a transaction, me, funeral home, every business you went in that day, that week,
mm-hmm.
you were in the same emotional, needy condition.
Right.
Whether it was a fast food restaurant, whether it was going to get your hair cut, whether it was going to get your shoes polished real quick for the service, everyone. Mm-hmm. And I bet 90% of them had no idea what you were going through.
Right. Yeah.
Is that true for you? It's true for me. We never know what's going on with our customers, right?
Absolutely.
But you were in you were in a needier state than usual,
right?
And so one of my takeaways from this is even invigorating me, and why every customer, every customer deserves woo.
Yeah.
Every business must woo. It's got to be intentional, because we have no idea. Not just what the customer needs as far as
the practical
box of cereal or the insurance policy or the new car we're selling, but the impact we could have, the impact they need on their life.
Right.
I mean, I'm sitting here as we're talking, thinking about some of our customers. Mm-hmm. And when I think about when sometimes the relationship was smoother than other times, more times than not, thankfully, it wasn't necessarily the performance of our team. unthankfully, it was more something else going on in their world or our world that was contributing to it. And so I see WOO as the intentionality of WOO, at least, as kind of an insurance policy to try to increase the probability that we can actually impact lives, serve others well.
Yeah, I love it. And, I think about the cascading effect of WOO, just how, that business, the grocery or the haircutting place or the shoe shine or whatever, if they had done something exceptional as a practice of their WOO, how that would have struck me in such a meaningful way. How there is a compounding effect of WOO, and unfortunately, there's a compounding effect of the absence of it.
Yeah. We, not to be lighthearted, but it is poo. You're being very nice and gentle and kind as you are, but there's some elements that sounds like they pooed you.
Yeah.
And the reality is that what I've learned later in life than younger is I can be pooed, but I can't necessarily really know the intention of the person who pooed me, right? And so we don't know. I would hope they would not have intentionally not cared for you as best as they could.
Right.
But it happens.
Okay.
That makes it even more critical for us to have processes and systems as business owners to ensure that we are intentionally serving our customers well. And frankly, we're intentionally empathizing with them in their state of need.
Right.
I translate it that, let's use restaurants, for example. Do I deserve better service for a $15 meal or a $200 meal?
Yeah. One would expect the $200 meal being more, but I think my hope and thought is that what you're saying is you always deserve great service. Is that?
I think customers always deserve great service.
Yeah.
And I understand, and I'm not saying that you deserve $100 worth of steak for $10. All right. And linen napkins or whatever the accoutrements could be. I'm not saying that, but sometimes the thing I need at the moment is for the transaction to enable me to do something else, not that transaction. Okay. So whether it be a $15 fast food experience versus a $200 meal, is that sometimes when we disappoint our customers, it's because our inability to deliver had a waterfall effect that had nothing to do with our transaction. Does that make sense? This whole impact thing.
Yep.
And so imagine if you were telling me this story about how you were served so well and how that would have impacted all the other transactions.
Absolutely.
I do want to give you a little hope on funeral homes.
Yeah.
Both my parents, as you know, have passed away in the last 2 years, and we use the same funeral home for both. And I realized that there were some things that mattered to me and my family more than others. And some things cost more than others. And I'm going to share with you something that pooed me and then something that wooed me. Going through all the options, if you remember, there's the registration book. And it's a pretty basic registration book.
Yeah.
And it was like $75, or you could do the leather bound one for $150, or you could do the gold plated one for $250. I'm slightly exaggerating, but I'm not.
Yeah.
And that kind of frankly disgusted me. Okay. It's a notebook with paper. Okay. Yes, capturing the names, but I was like, however, both my parents were cremated, and for whatever reason, I did not want to have to put my parents' ashes in our car and drive it the 250 miles from Durham, North Carolina to Monroe, North Carolina for the burial. And it cost $700 for them to drive a flower truck with two sets of flowers and the remains so that we didn't have to touch it.
That was worth it to you.
It was worth it to me. It was worth it to me.
Yeah.
And so as you were talking, it reminded me that while we can't always perfectly woo and poo our customers, that whether you're a funeral home or a restaurant or you sell insurance or you detail cars or whatever, you better try to understand the things that really matter most, not only to all your customers, but to the specific customer need. And a lot of times, what I feel like maybe part of the reason why I was less woo for you was you didn't feel the empathetic connection in the relationship. Is that accurate?
Absolutely. Yeah. Ed, I think you recapped nicely for our community that, we playfully both wore black shirts today, knowing the topic at hand. And we recognize, of course, that probably very few of you are involved in the death services industry or the industry of grief. However, the application is very real in terms of intentionality, in terms of empathy, in terms of the practical side of business, and even the cascading effect of every business deciding to woo the next customer and to think about it with great intentionality.
Yeah, because, think you're in business because you believe there is an unmet need that needs to be served.
Right.
I'll lose sight of that. We think about what we're trying to, we got to be outcome based, but we also have to remind ourselves, what is the ultimate need that we're delivering, and are we delivering it with intention?
It is our hope and prayer that, as always, the Wonder of Woo podcast has equipped you to serve others well, and in doing so, that you would actually be able to scale a business profitably, scale relationships profitably. Ed, we say it every time with conviction, of course, that what is that?
That is, no matter what industry you're in, no matter business in, everyone wants woo.
Indeed. We look forward to serving you and walking with you next time on the Wonder of Woo podcast. Until then, take good care.
Thanks. So that's it for today's episode of The Wonder of Woo. Head on over to Apple Podcast or wherever you listen to subscribe to our show. One lucky listener every single week who posts a review on Apple Podcasts will win a chance in the grand prize drawing to win a $25,000 value private VIP day with Darryl and me. Be sure to head on over to thewonderofwoopodcast.com and pick up a free copy of our gift. And please join us next time.